Coitus, definition, interrupted, risks. A term used to define vaginal penetration for reproductive purposes, coitus does not represent sexual intercourse in the broad sense, including several stages. Some details with Nathalie Giraud-Desforges, sex therapist and couples therapist. Definition. What is coitus? The term coitus, from the Latin coitus, means the fact of uniting. It is thus the coupling of the male with the female in the human but also animal genera. Although today one can find on websites a definition of coitus including the phases of seduction, excitement and foreplay, the term actually designates only the action of the penis penetrating the vagina with the aim of procreate and therefore mainly concerns heterosexual sexual intercourse, assures Nathalie Giraud-Desforges, sex therapist. One can indeed imagine that at the time when the term coitus was defined, the sexual relationship considered as a should be reduced to the act of procreation within a couple. According to Google Books Ngram Viewer, which allows you to observe the evolution and use of a word over time, the word coitus comes back in writings published in French or English mainly around the years 1600 to 1700, well before the report Human Sexual Responses by American sexologists William Masters and Virginia Johnson, who, in the years 1960 to 1970, described for the first time 4 different physiological phases in sexual intercourse. Sexual intercourse. Frequency, number. What standards? The frequency of sexual intercourse is one of the most frequent questions asked by couples. But what do these figures say about the pleasure and fulfillment experienced through sexuality? Update with Sandra Saint-Aimé, couple therapist and clinical sexologist. Their studies will be followed by the research of Hélène Kaplan, an Austrian-American sex therapist, who will make more of the link between sexuality and psychology and will describe at this time 3 phases other than penetration, desire, awakening and orgasm. Prior to this, the medical literature was based on a sexual norm that revolved around a normal sexual drive being heterosexual, marital, reproductive, adult, and monogamous. Male, the sexual drive is active. Female, it is passive. These postulates amount to saying that the sexual drive is not worth dwelling on for long as it does not deviate from the norm. Write Ivan Crozier and Oristelle Bonis in their book Cahiers du genre. The notion of pleasure and thus foreplay, caresses or even masturbation were therefore not part of coitus. Indeed, we did not speak, for example, of oral coitus to speak of fellatio. Masturbation. What are the benefits and areas to stimulate? Less and less taboo, masturbation or onanism is practiced by women and men. Characterized by self-stimulation of her own genitals with her hands or a sex toy, she participates in sexual fulfillment. Frequency, method. We guide you. What is a vaginal coitus? Vaginal coitus therefore consists of the introduction of the man's penis into the woman's vagina, then a back and forth movement adapted to the desires of the two people. The act, according to the definition of coitus, is intended for reproduction and requires male ejaculation for this. But it can of course lead to the sexual pleasure of the couple, for the man, thanks to the contact and friction with the vaginal walls, for the woman thanks to the internal stimulation of the clitoris. What is an anal intercourse? At the time when the term coitus was defined, anal penetration was not authorized, recalls Nathalie Giraud-Desforges. Over the centuries and decades, homosexual relations have become more democratic. We therefore understand by anal coitus, the act of sodomy, insertion of the penis into the anus of the other partner, whether it is a man or a woman. Prepare well before sodomy, foreplay, positions, lubricants. Do you want to discover anal pleasure with your partner? For this new experience to be successful, it must be very well prepared. Lubricant, enema, positions advice from Dr. Thierry Higuero, proctologist. What is multiple coitus? Multiple coitus refers to vaginal penetration during sexual intercourse between more than 2 partners. A priori, we move away here from the coitus linked to reproduction to highlight the pleasure. Libertinism as an example. Current of thought born in Italy during the 16th century. It was carried by theoreticians such as Machiavelli with the aim of opposing the mores of the religious authorities. The best known of the libertines is the Marquis de Sade, imprisoned in the 1780s after being accused of debauchery and sodomy. What is coitus interruptus? We speak of coitus interruptus when the man stops in his final phase of ejaculation and withdraws because there is no vocation to procreate, explains the sex therapist. This withdrawal technique is practiced as a contraceptive method, but beware, it is not certain. This is the case if the man does not withdraw in time or does not realize that he has already ejaculated. Also, if an ejaculation has recently taken place, then the pre-seminal fluid, which is not normally made up of sperm, can then carry with it the sperm still present in the urethral canal. What are the risks of coitus? Coitus entails a risk of pregnancy but also of sexually transmitted infections, of which the most frequent are chlamydiosis, human papillomavirus, HPV infection, hepatitis B, genital herpes, gonococcal disease or gonococcal infection, syphilis, mycoplasma infections and trichomoniasis, HIV/AIDS. STD/STI. List of sexually transmitted diseases and infections. Infections and diseases transmitted during sexual intercourse are on the rise in France. Very varied, they can be harmless or on the contrary fatal. Some are completely asymptomatic, others are not. Besides that, the risk of coitus is that it is not wanted, that there is no mutual consent, warns the sex therapist. It is then a rape. If the person forces himself to please his partner, the body will not succeed in forcing itself and will block penetration. By insisting, bleeding may appear and the body may intensify the pain. It is important to remember that intercourse alone does not constitute sexual intercourse. The acts during a sexual intercourse vary according to the partners and penetration is therefore not an obligation. Nathalie Giraud-Desforges also points out that beyond procreation, it is essential to seek pleasure by having a personal knowledge of oneself thanks to the exploration of one's body alone as well.